Psalm chapter 20 is where we're going to be today. Psalm chapter 20, if you want to turn in your Old Testament to Psalm chapter 20. I started today by asking a very simple question. I'm going to ask you the same question. You don't have to say the answer out loud. And I asked this question to 5 people. I purposely didn't ask certain people this question, but I also asked other people this question purposely. Here's my question. Would you rather watch the Browns, the Indians, or the Cavaliers? No answers. This is your answer. The Browns, the Indians, or the Cavaliers? So I gave a question that had 3 answers to it. And I asked 5 people. 3 answers, 5 people, and I got back 5 different answers, which just blew me away. All right, so everyone have their answers. If they not have their answers, they're still stumped because it's such a difficult question. Is there anybody that doesn't have an answer? Okay, ready? How many people chose that they want to watch the Browns? 4 of you. Okay. How many people chose that they would want to watch the Indians? Okay, a little more. All right. How many people would want to watch the Cavaliers? Oh, even more. Okay. How many people would want to watch none of them? Oh! Ron, your answer. Okay, now here, but this actually to me I thought was a really good answer. How many of you, when it's baseball season, you want to watch baseball? When it's the Cavs, you want to watch the end of it, but then you're going to go into baseball. And then when baseball's over, you're going to watch the Browns, and so it's kind of in season. So, see, when we ask questions, sometimes the answer is very obvious, right? And other times the answer isn't so obvious. And so that's why I like to ask questions a lot of times. And the reason I ask questions is because I want to know where your heart is. And the overflow of your mouth is what comes from the heart. That's what the Bible teaches us. And so the first one that answered me, his name is Nathan. I think he's 9 years old. It's Andy's son. And I asked him, and his answer was the Browns. And I was like, oh, do you think the Browns are going to be good this year? And he's like, no. So I just kind of stopped and like, okay. I'm like, well, when do you think they're going to be good? He goes, I think like 3 or 4 years, and then everyone will come back to it. And I'm like, I didn't know people left, but I guess they actually left. I said, okay, well, that's actually an interesting answer. For some of you, though, if I bring up the Cleveland Browns, it brings some distress, doesn't it? You kind of start to feel that on the inside. If I bring up the fact that the Indians, who haven't won that World Series since 1948, for some of you, that brings distress, right? And for those of you that are Cavs fans that are like, and this is like the major subject, LeBron might leave if we don't win. And LeBron might leave even if we win. That brings up distress, doesn't it? Guess what we're going to talk about today? Say it again. Who said LeBron? You're right. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about distress. Okay, we're going to talk about distress today because there's different ways that we all feel distress, and then it kind of overtakes every one of us. And it can be within our job, it can be within our school, it can sometimes be within our within our sports. I learned yesterday on a sport that I wasn't supposed to coach, and then I jumped in to help to coach in softball, that the guy left, and so they said, hey, can you come help coach? And I was at first base, and every time a girl got there, I said, this is what my cheer, encouraging story was. I'm like, I don't know the rules, I don't know the signs, good luck. That was it, because that's what they told me to do. And then my daughter, when she got to first base, she turned to me and said, Dad, pay attention over there, don't get hit in the head with a foul ball. So words of encouragement, obviously a big thing in our family. But there's all different areas that can cause distress. When they were winning, they were feeling pretty good about it. But when they started falling behind, all of a sudden that distress starts kicking in. It's the 4th inning and you're behind, it's the 5th inning and you're behind, and you have to win this level to get to the next level, and you have to, all of this stress that we constantly put on and we feel, and if your team isn't the number 1 team, there's only one team that wins at the end of the year in your division, and that's the one that wins the state championship, right? And you have all these other teams that have been trying and working hard, whatever it might be. In the tournament, there's only one team that wins. And so at some point in some time, there's going to be that distress from a sports standpoint. For those that are in music, they go to a yearly, or sometimes it's a regional thing where they go and they have to get a 1 or a 2 to move on to the next one, and there's that distress of waiting for that number to come up. Sometimes that distress is within our home. Sometimes that distress is because of a life event that's coming up. It could be a wedding. It could be planning for a wedding, which is always a big one. It could be having a baby. It could just be the end of school. That stresses some parents. Or all of a sudden, now what are we going to do? Because at least I knew where they were at 8 hours a day, and now I have no clue. There's always areas within our life that cause distress. And it's how we deal with it, and it's how we handle it. Because in our society right now, there are major moments taking place everywhere that cause distress. In Hawaii, which is one of the most beautiful places on the planet, all of a sudden, volcanoes start erupting. And they don't know, even if the road that they're driving on, all of a sudden it could split a road in half. And lava starts shooting up literally miles in the air. And yet, people that live there for their entire lives, they're willing to risk everything by putting on a mask and going through these poisonous fumes just to get something back in their life. It could be something that was passed down from their family. It could be pictures. It could be whatever it is that they can grasp a hold of just going back. And they're willing to risk everything to go and do that. It causes distress. They didn't plan it. They didn't see it, and it just happened. This last week we had I don't even know what number it is now as far as the school shooting, where we've taken God out of the schools, but the guns are coming in, and it's going to be argument after argument after argument. It's going to cause distress, distress, distress. But think of all those families that lost someone because of a decision that was made by a young person whose brain isn't formed enough to even make that decision. And sometimes it's things that we can't even control. Sometimes it's from a bad relationship. It could be a divorce or a separation or whatever, and the other person takes it upon themselves just to make a decision or to drag someone down or to make things up or whatever it might be. And the next thing you know, you're in a bad spot where you have nothing but distress. And then yesterday, that same field that I was standing on, our two teams that we had came together at the very end of the game because we stood in center field because the center fielder for the team that we played against, the starting center fielder at the beginning of the season, they had to bury her a week ago. 13 years of age. She had a stroke. They went and checked her out at the hospital, and then they went in 2 weeks ago to wake her up for church, and she was gone. And we just don't know. And so as we stood there and prayed, her entire team was crying, which they should, because there's so much distress that it causes from them. And yet, in the midst of all of these moments of distress, God can and will show up. One of the coaches, when we were done, wanted to make sure that all of the girls knew, because they had their numbers on their arms or on a number, a patch on their uniform, whatever it might have been, at 13 years of age, that this young lady, even though she was gone, 6 people's lives were saved because of her donating her organs. And when you're a child, only a child can take your children's organs. And when you're an adult, only an adult can. So that means that her life, she saved 6 people with her organs. But every day, that family has to wake up with that reminder. And obviously, it's going to cause unbelievable amounts of distress. So how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this when there's a deadline? How do we deal with this when there's 5 meetings and I only have time for 3? How do we deal with this when we worked all day and then we get home, we just want to relax, and it's the first time our spouse has seen us and they could use some adult interaction? How do we deal with this when, just like this week, it's the little people preschool graduation for this week, and it's going to be all fun with all these little kids coming up here. It's going to be a great time. But still, for Lisa and for the other teachers, at some point, sometime, it's going to be a little bit distressful, and even for the parents. So some of these moments seem small, and some of these moments are really big, but the bottom line is that for you and for me, we all have these moments of distress. Whether it's relational, whether it's financial, whether it's just missing God within those moments. Psalm 20 today is where we're going to start, and David is a king, and he's also someone that loves music. And so he is writing this is what's known as a royal psalm. A royal psalm is written from a king to a king. And so he's sharing this with all those who will take over to be king at some point, sometime. But the other side to it is he's also sharing this from peer to peer. So husband to husband, dad to dad, grandfather to grandfather, friend to friend, coach to coach, mentor to mentor. This is a peer-to-peer psalm that he shares, and the thing that he's going to remind us through this is that even within these moments, that God wants to share these same things with us. And so it is to be passed on. This was a song that was written so that they would have sang this when they were younger, and it would have been reminded of for these younger people to pass on to the next generation and the next generation, which we've talked about here recently. So in Psalm 20 it starts, and this is David, he says this, he says, "May the Lord answer you when you are in distress." And that's the first thing he talks about. Distress is something that comes in two different ways. Distress starts from a situation. And it's not how we deal with the situation, it's not the situation in which we deal with, it's how we deal with that situation. Let me say that again. It's not the situation, it's how we deal with the situation. And so David, even at this time, is something he's passing on, is you're going to have these moments of distress. And it might be a little down here, and it might be way, way up here, depending on the life event that you are going through. That's one kind of distress that we have. So it's a personal thing that we each take on. But then it leads to the second part, which is a psychological distress. And many times from a psychological distress, what this does is one of two things. It causes us to flee the situation, to run and hide, to pretend it's not there. But the other thing, and this happens many times, is it literally stops us and paralyzes us, to the point that we don't even know what to do next. And so we literally do nothing. And David understood this. There were moments within his life with Bathsheba where all of a sudden he realized, oh my goodness, this is a moment of distress. And if you think that he would have been someone who would have handled this perfectly, go and read the story of David and Bathsheba. He saw her bathing. He liked what he saw. He brought her into the palace. He's the king. 9 months later, they're having a baby. But before that, when they find out that she's having the baby, he brings her husband back with the whole plan and the plot to get him all drunk up, drink a lot, and then after you're drunk, go and see your wife. But Uriah had such character and integrity that he didn't do that. He slept on the steps of the palace. Now David's really in trouble, because now your wife's about to have a baby here in however many months, and this was supposed to be yours. And guess what? You didn't do what you were supposed to do. So when he goes back out to the battlefield, he sends out a letter and says, when the fighting is the heaviest, in front of everybody, I want you to pull away so that Uriah is left there, so that he can be killed. And that's what takes place. And then finally a friend of his comes to him and says, hey, enough's enough. This is your doing. And he realizes it. So if you think that David lived a perfect life and everything was great and perfect, he broke almost every commandment in about 25 verses. And it was a moment of distress after a moment of distress after a moment of distress that he chose to fix things his way. And many times, that's where we're at. That psychological distress that kicks in, that we either scheme, we run and hide, which is the easy thing to do, or we get to that point where it just stops us in our tracks. I can't even get out of bed in the morning. I can't even think about this. I just got to get to work and shut the door of my office and just stay in there. I got to go out to my safe place, whatever it might be, and just to get away from all of the distress. David understood that. And he understood it as a spouse, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a friend. It could affect every one of us. So he says, may the name of the God of Jacob protect you. Now, the interesting thing here is that he didn't say the God of Israel. Whenever you read the God of Israel in the Bible, that meant that this country, this chosen people, they were following and they were listening to what God was doing. And so they followed his commands, they followed the issues that he gave out, and they followed the decrees. But this is the God of Jacob. And so whenever you read the God of Jacob, this is because people were doing their own thing. People were choosing to do things how they wanted to do them. And so David knew, just as he did, he was following his own direction. And many times in distress, we follow our own direction. And so he's trying to pull them away from us. He says, may he send you help from me, may he send you help from the sanctuary. So that place that we go to, that there can be that help that comes from that. And at this time, for many of us, or for many of them, it would have been the temple. Okay, this temple that comes out, boom, hey listen, God is coming. His Spirit is coming upon you. His Spirit is coming out to you. When Jesus left, He left us with that Holy Spirit that can take us over at any time, that we can live with at any time, that we can recognize at any time. That God will freely give His power to us at any time. And many times that power is just going to stop. You're feeling that distress. You're feeling beat down. You're discouraged. You're lonely. You're angry. You're lazy. You don't want to hear the next words. And yet through it, God can build us up from His very sanctuary to lift our spirits. He continues, says, make you remember all your sacrifices and accept your burnt offerings. See, at this time, there were sacrifices you made. If you were struggling, you went and took a different kind of animal, depending on the struggle you were having, and you burn it, and you lift it up to God, and it was this moment that you could point back and say, that's when I burned this bull, this sheep, this goat, this whatever it might have been. That's when I stopped long enough to recognize God, and I saw the smoke reaching to the heavens, and I looked up and said, all right, God, this is yours. Was believers, now, that's our time to stop to recognize the Holy Spirit and see what God is doing in our life. But if we have distress to the point we're paralyzed, we're looking in and we're looking down. God wants us to look out and He wants us to look up, to turn to Him. The next verse says this, it says, may He give you the desire of your heart and make all your plans succeed. So we have these desires that we have within our hearts, and David understood that. And he wants to make those plans succeed. But success is relevant. Success is a different level. Success, in one person's eyes, may be different than what you see in your eyes. What I see as success, and I turn to you, but that is so great that that happened to you, and then you're turning and going, well, you know what? I wanted to get a 10, and I only got a 4. And so we can't see the success many times personally. And so we stop with it. Kids do this all the time with their grades. My son ended up with a 3.47 one time, and a 3.5 is dean's list. He's like, I didn't make dean's list. And he felt like he failed. Well, that's a number that the school put on. My whole thing was, you survived. You should be happy. Right? My other son's going to be graduating next year. They're going to play a song that represents his grades. Dee, 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 dee. That's a bad graduation joke. Sorry. I had to throw a dad joke in there. But what we see as success, what others see as success, may not be the same thing. Getting through the semester at times for students is a success. Just making it to the end. Getting to graduation for some is a success. Getting through preschool is a success. Getting to middle school, there's all different levels. What is it that you define as success? Because you may hit this level and you may only hit this level. But can you accept this as success, or accept that God was in it to this point and that there was some reason you didn't get to here? Because that's what we want to do. To get to that point where, okay, God, for whatever reason, I'm causing myself this distress. At the same time, everyone else around me sees that I have succeeded. Help me to rest in that by resting in you. We will shout for joy when you are victorious, and we will lift up our banners in the name of our God. At this time, they would go to war, they would hold banners up so that you knew who it was that was coming to invade you. Oh my goodness, that's a symbol of David. He's coming down the path. We have a choice. We're either going to run or we're going to fight. If we fight, we're probably going to lose. And others are like, you know what? We're going to put up our banners, and we're going to meet you in the valley, and we're going to butt heads, and we're going to fight till it's over. At the end, one of the banners is going to be running, and one of them is going to be sitting. What are the banners that we lift up to God when we succeed? Can we stop long enough to lift our hands and go, God, you were here through this entire thing. And every time I found a moment of distress, I just stopped long enough to recognize you. Thank you. Thank you. See, this can be lifting up a banner. This can be lifting up a banner. Lifting our eyes upward can be lifting a banner. And our arms outstretched can be lifting that banner. And we start right here, and then we get right to here. David continues, and he says this, and we'll lift up a banner in the name of our God. May the Lord grant you all your requests. Now, many times we ask for tons and tons of requests. But we have to remember there's a difference between the wants and our needs. And so in those moments of success, as God providing what it is that we need, and every once in a while, maybe it's something we want as well. once again, what's it go back to? The distress. These moments where, oh, I have to stop here for a second, and am I truly listening to what God wants? Or am I truly making the desires about what I want? He continues, he says this, now I know that the Lord saves his anointed. In the Old Testament, these were kings and prophets he was talking to, those that were anointed. In the New Testament, these are the believers. This is you and I. He says he answers us from his holy heaven and the saving power of his right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses. Now David brings this up because he was a warring king. There's many times the more you would show up with your chariots and your horses, the more people that there were, it was one of those moments like, uh-oh, we are in trouble. But God is bigger than all of that. There's actually a story in the Old Testament where these guys show up with all their chariots and their horses. And the guys on their side, they're like, what are we going to do? We are in trouble. And when it goes time for the battle, God sends this huge rainstorm. And all the guys are in their chariots that are made of metal. There's lightning that's coming down and striking these things, and they can't get these heavy chariots out of the mud. And so they're so focused on the chariots that the guys are running across and taking out one after another after another. And when they're done, the only thing left are just these chariots laying here and horses running away. It was God's power that they rested in. And why David is sharing this is so many times we get so focused on us and our power and the things that we have that we don't recognize God within the battle. And when those times happen, we have distress. David continues and he says this. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. We call out to God. We stop long enough to recognize God. And the best part about it is that God wants us to do so. So that we get to a point where in the past we would have grabbed someone by the throat. We would have yelled at them. We would have knocked them upside the head. We would have just turned our back and left. We would have just quit. But we stop long enough to recognize the name of God and what he has done in our life to make us pause for a moment, to use his Spirit, to rest in his Spirit, and to take away that distress. Because now we're no longer paralyzed. Now we're no longer running and hiding. Now we're no longer turning away. Now we're stopping to see what it is that God has in store next. He finishes the next. He says, verse 8, they are brought to their knees and fall, but we rise up and stand firm. So there is something that takes place with that. We don't have to run and hide. We don't have to turn away. We can stand firm in God and in his Spirit. And in verse 9 he says, O Lord, save the King. Answer us when we call. This was written to the king, once again. David wrote this to a king, but this can happen for any one of us in any role. So it could be, oh, save the husband who's struggling. Oh, save the parent that is struggling. Oh, save the coach that is struggling. Oh, save the one that had that loss, that right now that they're feeling that distress. Oh, save the one that has this life-changing moment that's coming up and they can't even see. Or the one that they have it scheduled, the one that they know is coming. That God is big enough to save you in any one of those moments of distress. I saw one of my favorite things that I've ever seen this week about a person dealing with distress, and I don't even know if they know. I'm sure they do, but it started off as a fun thing, but they turned it completely around. And by the time I'm done, you're going to want to send all your kids to Norton. The principal at Norton made a decision that they were going to have a race. So that all the kids would go out and they would run a 5K, which is really far. It's like 50 miles, I think. I'm not a metric guy, but to me it would feel like 50 miles. And whoever beat the principal didn't have to take their exams. Now, I'm just going to tell you something. I don't run, but I was that wise guy. So I would grab two of my other buddies that didn't run, and when they hit the go sign, I know I can't catch them, but I know three of us can hold them down. So you get behind them, I'll push them over you, and then let's all just lay on them, and at least give everyone a 10-minute head start, right? So that way some of your buddies might actually have the chance to graduate. But there were, 17, 18, 19, whatever it is, kids that beat him in this race, and the deal was, if you beat him, you didn't have to take your exams. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Now, if you're the person that's in front of him, it doesn't matter if you finish 1st, 12th, 15th or whatever, just so you're in front of that guy, you're not taking your exams. So you're running across the finish line going, my 3D's held. I don't even have to take an exam. I'm good to go. And you're excited. Or my 5A's held, depending on some of them. But if you're the guy that's closest to the principal, you're doing one of these as you're running. Looking over the shoulder to see if he's got like a kick down the stretch. But at the end, how many people, and it was the numbers in the teens, didn't have to take their exams this week? But at the start line, everyone there is feeling the distress. Now, there's the one guy that runs so fast, he doesn't have to worry about it, right? He's the Kenyan runner that just happened to, he's a foreign exchange student. He's like, he doesn't care about exams anyway. And there's a principal who's looking around and going, I don't care if I win, I just want to beat that kid because I want to make him take his exams. And then there's the people that are in the middle. I think I have a shot. Now, I believe that this principal should make bumper stickers now that say, I beat my principal in a race. And just Norton High School and then stamp it on. Because next year it tells everyone, listen, you want to not take your exams? Get out there and start running. So he's promoting physical exercise, or physical fitness and physical education and all those things. I think it's a wonderful thing. But some people are going to look at it and go, you know what, my kid isn't a runner, and that's not fair. That's just what's going to happen. And they've never run in their entire life. And you're promoting just the athletic kids. Let's have a karaoke contest. Let's hear how you sing. And we'll have 4 judges in the front, right? There's going to be something that's going to shut it down, which is a shame. But I see it as a leader who now has an opportunity to make possibly an entire school focus on that physical fitness, and on top of it, who isn't afraid to put where he's at on the line. I made you a deal. This is the deal. You take it or leave it. It's whatever you choose. And let's go have some fun. It should be a fun thing. Plus with the bumper stickers and all that, that's just a fun idea. But I will guarantee it's going to cause some distress with some people in the community. And many times what happens is they stand up to do the things for all the right reasons, and then they take all the pot shots because of it. And you know what? There's going to be distress. But I would take them back to that moment and say, the thing that you chose to do was a great thing school-wide. Because everyone that wanted to go out and run got out and ran, or got out and ran. And part of it was fun. For some of them that couldn't catch him, maybe it wasn't as fun. But he can do something now with that to continue to lift the kids within his school. And that's what leaders should do. And the adults will step in, and because of all the distress, they'll probably make it stop. I hope not. I hope they have it every single year. I hope through it all he just says, nope, this is what we're doing, this is what we decided to do. We'll look at other avenues and we'll discuss it. But he's going to take those moments of distress, and he's going to turn that into something positive. And something that all can participate in. And that can lift every single person up in any classroom at any time when they decide. And see, that's what distress does for each of us. We have to deal with it personally. Your distress is different from my distress. Your thing that's coming up this week or this month or in a year, whatever it is, that is your thing. Are you going to try and handle it on your own, or are you going to give it to God? Some of us doesn't even have a time frame. We don't know when it's coming. How are you going to deal with it? Maybe you're graduating from school. Maybe you're heading off to college. Maybe you're putting a kid on a school bus. Maybe you're dealing with a customer that you're just so tired of, you just wish someone else would take it. Whatever it might be. Grandkids, all of that stuff. Vacations. Graduation parties that are coming up. Moment after moment after moment that can cause distress, or it can stop us long enough to recognize God and His Spirit within it. This is from 2 Corinthians. I'm just going to read this. Just listen to these verses. Right where you sit. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Because there's always a solution. There's always a follow-up. There's always something that God gives us that we can hold on to. Therefore, anytime we see therefore, we stop and say, what is that therefore? Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. To deal with distress, we have to be renewed day by day. And it's a choice that everyone must make. The circumstances are different, but the choices can all be the same. It's not resting in ourselves, it's recognizing God within the moments. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that outweighs them all. There's so much more that we can't see. But man, we grasp a hold of it, God's going to show us. He's going to show those that are anointed. He's going to show those that are believers. He's going to show those that trust in Him. And so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, and what is unseen is eternal. Every day you have an opportunity through your spirit and through your person to be a light or to turn a light off. And you may never, ever get the achievements, the rewards, the recognition that you hope to. But when you're doing it for God, one day that time will come where He will recognize it. Don't give up. That moment of distress that you have, don't hide. Don't turn away. Don't be paralyzed. Stop long enough to take it back to those moments and to continue to use His Spirit to walk you through each of those moments that God has blessed you with. So that in the end, when you feel that time of distress, that instead of turning inward and downward, we'll turn outward and upward and recognize God and His Spirit in each of those moments. You don't bow your heads so we can say a word of prayer. Andy and Courtney and everyone's going to come up and play this one last song. We're going to sing 2 verses and a chorus. If you have come here today and that moment of distress that you have in your life is because you've never stopped long enough to recognize God, you never stopped long enough to say, okay, God, what is you have in store for me? Because you don't really know Him. But you've never stopped to say, I need you. And we all have this life, but I know there has to be more. And so today I want to make it a day where I admit that I need you, that I believe in you, and I commit to your ways. If you've never taken that step, I want to challenge you today that you can take that step. We have a break after a couple of verses. But also today, you know the distress that you have in your life. You know what's causing you to be paralyzed. You know what's causing you to hide. You know what's causing the struggles. What's a way that you can turn that to God and have God in the center so that day by day that you are resting in His Spirit, and that day by day you can rest and know that His Spirit is working through you. Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for this time together. Lord, as we had this conversation today and just talking about what your word shares, I thank you for David. I thank you for his honesty. Lord, we all know we're going to have that time of distress. But God, you want to change us from the inside out. Lord, would you give us that strength today? Would you help us within every moment, that day by day, that we can rest in and recognize your Spirit? Lord, help us to trust in you. Help us to know that you're in control. Help us to put away all that distress and instead to recognize and rest in your Spirit. Lord, we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. Y'all please stand.